Hello, everyone. I am Andrea Davis from Homeward in Missoula, and I am your room host for this breakout session. This session is housing navigation and community engagement. So glad that you could join us this morning. Please mute your lines and use the chat function for questions. We will try and address all questions before the end of the session. The presenters are going to present for about 45 minutes, and then we'll leave the last 15 for Q&A, and Chandler will also remind folks that questions can be asked along the way. Just a few housekeeping items. All sessions are being recorded. Please mute your lines and turn off your video while the presenters are presenting. Please click the chat icon, select all panelists and attendees, and enter your name, organization, and location. You may turn your video back on during Q&A time. Each of you should have received a whiteboard paddle and marker in the mail. If you find something inspiring, exciting, or new, write a quick adjective on the whiteboard, hold it up, and let us know during the Q&A time at the end of the session. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the floor over to the presenters, and Chandler Rowling is gonna start us off. Chandler?
Yes, thank you everyone for coming to this session. It's great to see so many participants. And so I'm going to see if I can move this over so we can go to a presentation view, but it looks like I don't have access. So we'll kind of move from there. But anyway, so thank you everyone for attending again. And we'll go ahead and just get started with the session that we had already mentioned is for housing navigation and community engagement. And I want to just go over what we'll be discussing through our learning objectives. So for today, the first objective is going to be going over what is housing navigation. And so what does our housing navigation programs do in our community? And so I do want to mention that housing navigation, there's different type of terms for it. So it's not just maybe a housing navigator, but you might hear housing liaison, housing coordinator, housing case manager. And so there's multiple different other titles for folks that may be doing this similar type of service or programs. And so also want to mention there are many other amazing housing navigators in our state of Montana, outside of the folks that are in our panel. And so I want to recognize those folks too. And then also each of us, once we get to our first question, both me, Steve, and Sean will go over what our programs do to hopefully give you a better idea what is housing navigation. And so our next learning objective is going to be going over challenges. And so we've discussed before many different type of challenges in regards to housing, landlord engagement, collaboration, best practices, the services we offer. And so we're going to be touching base on multiple topics today when it comes to challenges. And so I just want to mention that in this session, I want it to be hopefully very interactive, open for folks to please put questions inside the Q&A. And then if you want, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions along the way. Definitely just don't want to be talking directly to you guys. Just want to have more of a collaborative session in this one. And then lastly, we'll go over some solutions that each of us have encountered throughout not only just this year, but since our programs have been running and doing housing navigation. So next, we're just going to do some brief introductions. So again, my name is Chandler Rowling. I am a housing navigator at Good Samaritan Ministries in Helena, Montana. And to just give you some background in regards to me and why I do what I do, I experienced homelessness and housing instability throughout high school and college due to family relationships breaking down and domestic violence. And so to help me get back to communities and to heal in my own way, I do that through the work that I get to do today through housing services. And so I'm very excited and happy to be a part of this session and to introduce you guys to the pilot program that we started in Helena for housing navigation. And then Sean, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you for that, Chandler. So my name's Sean O'Neill. I am the housing manager with the housing programs for Community Action Partnership of Northwest Montana. And basically, the reason why I'm in this field and doing what I do is was very fortunate with, how I was raised, had some good examples there of stability. And I had quite a few family members that didn't, as far as struggled through homelessness and housing instability for years and years. So I had firsthand experience through my family with that. But then after college, didn't know what I was going to do with myself because I graduated with an architecture degree, and Forbes magazine, the month I graduated, came out with top degrees to avoid. And number one was architecture, because you can't do anything but architecture with it. So when the big old boom happened, I didn't have any opportunities. So I joined AmeriCorps Vista and got placed in Kalispell with CAP, Community Action Partnership, and worked on some homeless programs that some of you may be familiar with, the Project Homeless Connect events that are around the state and the nation. That was my baby here. And then I started working with Samaritan House, our local emergency shelter, for my second year of Vista, and ended up writing the 5-year plan to address homelessness for our community, and kind of got, smitten with helping people get out of these situations and really feel like I'm doing something proactive within our community for the most vulnerable people. So, and Steve, you're
Hey, Sean. Steve Fournier with Action Inc. I've been doing this kind of work for the last 30 years. I worked with Western Montana Mental Health. Well, back in the 90s, it was the Mental Health Services. I was part of the PATH team. So I was out searching for homeless folks and trying to get them housed. Started working for Action Inc. in 2001 at Homeward Bound Transitional Homeless Facility, and as a case manager. Stayed up there until the program closed down, and then started doing the rapid rehousing with ESG, COC, stuff like that. My role here with Action Inc., I kind of wear a couple different hats. I'm the lead service advocate. I am the housing navigator, and then I also do a lot of mediation between the landlords and the tenants, trying to keep the folks housed that are housed and work on the other ones.
So thank you guys for introducing what you guys do. I think we just have a good overview of what we get to do in general, but it's just very similar services. So thank you guys. To start with the panel questions and to kind of go more in depth as to the services we offer and more about our programs. The first question then will encompass, so if we want to just introduce and give a little bit more detail about what each of our agencies do in depth, just to give people an overview of a little bit more about our roles, the populations that we serve, and just other resources that we connect and engage with. So do one of you guys want to start off?
Yeah, I'll start. Here at Action Inc., we offer many services. We manage the ESG, the Emergency Solutions Grant, the Continuum of Care, which provides housing assistance to the folks that meet that criteria and that eligibility. So that's where I'm at with them. We have Section 8 housing, we have weatherization. We do the Head Start here in Butte. We just started up with I think it's the YDHP, the new housing for the homeless youth. It's a pilot project. So we're also doing that. We have Some housing that we own and manage. We have units in Deer Lodge, Twin Bridges, Sheridan, Ennis, and then the Continental Gardens here in Butte, which is for the elderly senior housing. So, we do quite a bit of things. That's what I'm aware of. I know we get lots of other grants that we have to try to help out. I didn't mention LEAP. We do the LEAP. And then also Energy Share. So those are many of the programs at Action Inc. that we offer here. And I'm sorry if I missed anything. Maybe one of my co-workers or teammates could share that with me.
Portion of Devin, it's like, I don't want to go back.
Oh, I think you did a great job, Steve. I think there's just so much that we all do. So I think just as we go through the other questions, we'll probably touch base more on those. So thank you. I'll go ahead and go next and just state that the housing navigation program here in Helena, Montana started as a pilot program in January of 2020. And I'm very, very excited to have had the city of Helena and Lewis and Clark County open to help support and fund this, this project. And so since then, the main focus for the program that I run in Helena for housing navigation is for those that are workforce housing. And we've defined that as folks that are currently working, and then those during COVID, if they lost their employment, got on unemployment, and they were just actively looking for a job, that also we would admit those folks into the program and help them start looking for housing opportunities. And outside that, with prevention for eviction prevention and prevention for homelessness too. And so if there are some folks that came to the program that weren't necessarily homeless yet, then maybe just negotiation and using mediation to just try to figure out on a case-by-case basis to keep people housed too. But the main thing that I wanted to go over along with the services and the population is that there's also the stigma of what homeless might mean. And so with this program, and when it started, COVID hit, right kind of when the pilot project started, it was just huge to be able to have that as a service for our community members. And so many people came to the program that, they sat in my office and they would just look at me and tell me, I'm sorry, I've never experienced homelessness ever before in my life. And these people are perfectly well employed, working, very well jobs, and maybe not even one, but might be working 2 jobs to keep afloat. But they just cannot access housing, or they're just experiencing housing instability. And so going through that pilot year was, it was amazing to be able to meet everyone that I have and that amazing collaboration that I've had. So basically with this program, its mission was to help engage and connect property managers, landlords, other housing partners, along with those clients that were experiencing housing instability. And just being that collaborator with everyone, that middle man, if you will, for this program was amazing to be able to provide that service, and it worked fantastic. And we've been able to build, I think, just a lot more openness and communication and work and ideas by having this. And so along with the additional service and how the layout worked for this program was when people entered into the program, we would do a basic intake with the use of HEMIS, or Homeless Management Information System. And I created my intake through multiple resource tools that were already created here in the state of Montana. Some of them were through Missoula, some were with billing. So I greatly appreciate those other housing navigators that helped me create these resource tools and intake assessments as I was creating this project from the ground up. And so really great collaboration on just getting that started with the intake process. And then after the intake is done, then it's just prepping these clients, and that takes time. Some of them have different barriers. And so the main project that is up and coming for this program is to offer renter courses to our community members. And so helping to educate folks and providing templates to create cover letters, being able to educate them on their rights, going through credit building if they need it. And so just preparing folks for the market and educating them on it. And then outside of that would be just that housing navigation piece. And so just starting to look for housing by going also with them to house showings, talking to landlords, and engaging both with the tenant and the community. And that in itself goes a long way. I know everyone on this call knows that the housing market it's very strained. It's kind of hard trying to find rentals, but having those relationships and building trust between tenants and landlords has been huge. And so I'm very thankful that this program has been able to accomplish what it has. And then also being in with Good Samaritan Ministries. Good Samaritan Ministries alone, the other projects and programs that we have overall just really helps provide those wraparound services and financial assistance. So yeah, I think that goes over my program. Sean?
Hello. So just ditto what they all said. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm trying to answer some of these chat questions. Sorry, I'm not as good at multitasking as I probably could be, but I'll get back to that one question. So here at Community Action Partnership of Northwest Montana, we serve the 4 Northwest counties in Montana, and similar to the other agencies that are on this call, and some of you are obviously very familiar with CAP and similar organizations, but we are like we're the local HRDC, and so we have a number of programs from LEAP, energy share weatherization. All of our programs focus on low income or basically no income individuals. And so what we end up serving, we do employment and training for TANF recipients, low-income energy assistance, as I mentioned before, but then we also have housing programs like the Housing Choice Voucher, AKA Section 8. We have a couple of housing navigators in here that we're contracted through the state to help run those, operate those programs here. And then we have our emergency assistance programs, which often get misconstrued with immediate assistance programs because we are not able to really provide immediate housing usually unless we have a direct line to a bed at the shelter or something like that, which often our clients who are not used to or have little experience being homeless are very hesitant because of the stigmas that Chandler had mentioned earlier. So, often with our specific housing programs, we target, so there's rapid rehousing and homeless prevention programs. And so with our rapid rehousing programs similar to what Chandler and Steve do, we really focus on helping homeless individuals and households get back into housing as quickly as possible, because as we all know, the longer you wait, the harder it is. And it's not that we're waiting, it's more like just finding it. So the longer you are without rental history, the more questions a landlord will ask. Why do you have no housing history for the last 4 months? And so, I mean, there's definitely targeted populations which we prioritize within those. As I saw in the chat box, somebody kind of answered that question. Locally, I represent our coordinated entry system. And so that is a good way for folks to access our services through other agencies that maybe come across folks that are struggling with housing across the counties that we serve. And so they will directly connect them to our coordinated entry system, which allows me or whoever, we also have other housing navigators in that group, allows us to connect them with our services or maybe, emergency shelter services. The goal of the rapid rehousing, as I said, is to get people into housing as quickly as possible, but we're able to, help out with the deposit and rental assistance, usually not much more than a very short period of time with those programs. Usually our funding is not to the point where we could serve as long as we would like to, but again, we are lucky to have a lot of these programs just in general with our population sizes. It's often, I would say, that people in, DC or other places where they're much larger, they can't even fathom that there's a homelessness issue in Montana. So, we target obviously the folks that often what we see in our rapid rehousing program are those people that have an income, whether it's a fixed income or they're working, part-time, full-time, multiple jobs. And so we basically try to connect them with landlords that either we have some rapport built up with, and they usually will give us priority on units, or, for folks that are, very able of and capable of taking care of the application process themselves. Often we'll go over it within the housing navigation piece. We'll go over one application with them and make sure that they have all their ducks in a row and a solid information and the information that a landlord would be looking for, and try to steer away from any negative history or anything like that. And so we help them put their best foot forward. That's the housing navigator's role in those situations, where, we want to make sure they have their best resume built for applying for housing. So then they can use that as a template for whatever other applications that they're able to, or that they are interested in filling out. So homeless prevention, we obviously, similar to what Chandler was saying, there's people that aren't quite homeless yet, or that are on the verge of homelessness, that if we're fortunate enough to be able to qualify them for one of our homeless prevention programs, or one homeless prevention program, I should say, then usually we're able to help them retain housing or get into new housing if that housing doesn't work out. But the way, there's obviously that navigator's role in that piece would be figuring out how viable it is for them to be able to maintain that housing. And so that's kind of the big role. And then also seeing if there's any other options, because our programs are very strict, as I kind of mentioned before, but and they're federal programs, so it's not like it's just ours, but they're very strict. And so some people won't be eligible for them, but we will want to have them in our coordinated entry should things get worse, and we're at least able to react and respond much quicker than we would had we been 2 weeks after they got it versus 2 weeks before. So those ones are our main ones. We have also local, well, as far as CAP goes, we also have an institutional release program, a youth homeless demonstration project that helps chronically homeless disabled youth between the ages of 18 and 24 with permanent supportive housing. And then we also have a Shelter Plus permanent supportive housing for 18 and up. And those programs really focus on our most vulnerable populations. I mean, institutional release, obviously someone who's been homeless prior to being either incarcerated, which is what it was mostly designed for, or, we've opened it up to folks transitioning out of a treatment or rehab facility, or maybe the state mental health hospital. We've had to tailor it as a little specifically because unfortunately, it's not something where we can just have someone staying at a 3-day stay at a mental health treatment center as qualifying for an institutional release program. So, and then the permanent supportive housing and youth, our youth programs, those ones, they really target our disabled, chronically homeless populations that are the most vulnerable. We have assessments that we measure their acuity with through our coordinated entry system. And, you know, we really come together as a community to determine and prioritize these folks and try to get them into housing, you know, first as soon as possible, and then figure out the details of wrapping around services and financial assistance as we go. And so those folks are usually the ones that we've been able to assess will probably, or not probably, are most likely to die on the street versus, you know, other people taking the assessment. So that's kind of how we prioritize folks with our programs. Obviously, I'm talking a little bit longer than I probably should, but
You're good, Sean.
yeah, right. But, you know, there are a lot of programs that are out there. They're different with each community, but some of them have a lot of similarities. So a lot of the ones that you're probably going to want to connect people with, as far as what we provide, are the rapid rehousing programs, because those are the ones where we help people that are in shelters and their vehicles, maybe fleeing domestic violence, depending on the program. You know, it gives us a lot of flexibility, but also, you know, it's not like necessarily couch surfing is something that works for some of these programs. Unfortunately, there are some instances where it is usable, but, you know, for the most part, if people don't have a housing option, that's when we step in. But if they do have, you know, mom's spare bedroom or uncle's, you know, basement, like finished basement to live in, then we're not necessarily navigating for them very much. But and
Yeah, I think you
Things I wanted to mention that I forgot to, you know, we are here, we serve not only Somerville County, but we have 5 other counties that we serve: Beaverhead, Deer Lodge, Granite, Madison, and Powell. So pretty much southwestern Montana. We are also the coordinated entry lead agency, the HIMAS lead as well. And then also an open doors along with Western too.
Yeah, there's a lot I didn't mention with Good Samaritans, but for time, I'll go ahead and just enter that into underneath my profile with additional information too. I do want to go on to the next question, if that's okay, guys. And
Yes.
also I want to touch base too, if there's any Q&As inside the chat box, because I can't see it. If someone can let me know.
Chandler, there are some questions. If you want me to go ahead and ask those of you now, we can do that.
Yes, please.
All right, great. So the first question, and I believe that Sean did answer this, but in case folks can't see it, the first question is, if they're homeless and disabled and receiving Social Security disability income, would they be able to access this program? Now,
Yes,
Sean answered, depending on the program, but they should be eligible for almost all, if not all, rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing programs. Anything to add to that? No. Great. I'll move on to the next question here. This is from Rachel. How do clients apply? Do they call and set up an appointment, or is there an application online?
well, here in Butte, we have a thing called open access, and from 11 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday, any of those folks can meet with us up here at Action Inc. We get some information from them, have them sign off on the necessary paperwork, the releases and stuff like that to get them on the coordinated entry list. And then if we do have somebody, let's say they, for whatever reason they can't make it up here because, you know, they might be, stuck at home, or, might be during work hours. They call in, we get a little information, and then one of our service advocates actually reaches out to them, gets the information, sets up stuff to get the ball rolling, get the paperwork signed. And we take it from there. And then we're also, we do quite a bit of outreach. We're out there Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays out serving lunches and soup. We go to the Butte Rescue Mission twice a week for outreach. And then we're also, hitting the KC when they're handing out lunches. This, for question number 2 for me, what is the challenge you face in your line of work right now? And I know everyone's feeling the same thing, but youth is in a housing crisis. The availability is very scarce. When I'm talking to landlords, property managers, owners, stuff like that, we got the people coming from out of town, here in Montana, and a lot of folks from out of state, to where they're sending checks and money or getting you on the waiting list, and the next thing you have available to get on. So the availability, but not only that, our public housing authority here in Beaver is in the middle of a remodel. So we were able to work with them closely before they started that remodel, and the epidemic before that started, to where we had that. So that's another thing that we are challenged with as far as subsidized housing. It's just, they're just not there right now.
Yeah, and I'll mention too from that previous question, and I think Sean would say something similar in regards to how to schedule appointments or how to find folks. Similarly with Good Samaritans and where Sean's at, we're also open access doors too. And so just during our business hours, probably, you can enter or call in and schedule appointments. But Sean, did you have anything to add about that chat question?
As far as
how they enter into your program, how folks can enter?
yeah, I mean, that's the same, just obviously directly through our front door, or coordinate entry would be another way to access or at least be referred to our programs. But I was going to say something real quick about the front door list that Bob just sent out. Technically, we should probably be sharing that with our clients. I know it's one of those things that, but their front doors, they've agreed to be accessed by, as long as they're open, by our clientele to get direct access to the coordinate entry as soon as possible. So the point is of the coordinate entry is literally connect, like within 1 minute of them becoming homeless in our community, we want them in. So however, to connect them as quickly as possible to our the local coordinate entry, if that is providing them with that information for the provider, I'm okay with it. And I mean, Bob, you can tell me no, but I am the co-chair for the coordinate entry for the state of Montana. So I do have a little bit of authority on saying that, but not enough probably to say what I just said. So I would honestly refer clients directly to those providers. I do, but I'm the main one here. So I know that if we're open 8 a.m., we have like 2 or 3 people ready to enter into the coordinate entry through our front door, referred by the hospital or something. So just a heads up, not to, yeah.
And then Sean, what was one challenge that you think you have definitely faced while being a housing navigator or operating your program?
So obviously, the housing market for Montana in general is nuts right now. And it has been for our local area, at least in the Kalispell, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, Big Fork area. It's been that way before COVID, at the trajectory that it was at. But we're also seeing that now in our smaller communities like Libby, Troy, Sanders County, definitely Lake County is blowing up as well. So that's always kind of been a challenge. So I'm gonna, as I already mentioned that, I'm gonna kind of carry on to a different one. But the biggest challenge for us right now is the retention. Outside of finding new housing, which is just not happening with the eviction moratorium and the housing market blowing up, our biggest challenge is when we do get somebody into housing, making sure that we have them engaged and that the provider is engaged into them with services that would be supportive services, like the mental health piece, the developmental disabled case management piece. So a lot of these pieces we're seeing with our clients We're seeing a large amount of clients coming through that are just so, decompensated or lacking in ability to care for themselves, and the level of care is so high that there's just nothing being met by any provider, and then it ends up falling on the lap of the housing navigator, who ends up being an unofficial case manager. And so that's what ends up happening in the beginning a lot, and then it'll end up carrying on if we don't figure it out. So one of the key challenges is to connect people and get them engaged, but also follow through with the providers to make sure they're engaging, because I hate to say it, but we're all so busy that if we don't get constantly reminded about some things, people slip through the cracks. And it's not necessarily like we're just so busy that it's hard to make sure that we're on top of everything. But I know locally our mental health providers just haven't been able to provide the level of care that our most mentally ill in public folks that are not deemed too mentally ill or unstable to be in society. We have a lot of people in society right now that have no mental health services, no supportive services, physically even speaking. And so that's our biggest challenge with folks that are most vulnerable, is getting them connected with those services as quickly as possible, and then making sure that they're kind of engaging, because the landlord is banking on them helping us, and if they don't, then it falls on us, and that just ends up ruining whatever rapport we may have had. If you have three, often for example, I have a landlord that has a set of units that has helped us with 3 institutional release clients, and really trying to help out the community, right? Well, all of them destroyed their units within 3 months and didn't have any outpatient treatment or mental health service providers follow through with their end of the rental agreement bargain that we had set in place. So they no longer want to work with us, though they came to us to offer us this opportunity to house these people. So it was really kind of, double whammy. They offered and we accepted, but it ended up being with clients that we weren't able to support enough from our position to be able to maintain their housing. And I was going there every week to talk to them, to talk to the landlord, to make sure that everything that could be done from our end was. But unfortunately, those are the trials that we have with this job. Is there's often mental health, substance abuse, or some other disabling condition that makes it very difficult to help our people maintain their housing. And so
Thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. I think that's very relevant to that. And then Chandler, before you answer this question that's on your slide, somebody asked in the Whova app, and I think this is relevant to Sean, what you were just presenting, and whoever wants to answer this question, but does 211 have information about obtaining case management?
So 211 is a local. So it depends on where you are if you have 211 even. So we don't have 211 in Kalispell yet. We're about to get one in the next month. But I would hope, from what it used to do when it was active, they would be referring. They're actually supposed to be, well, usually, ideally, like in Missoula, they're linked up directly through the coordinated entry, and will actually complete the assessment and get them entered into the coordinated entry right away. So 211 should do that. Let's put it that way. It should do that.
Yeah, I was going to say it is a little bit different in every part, but within Helena, we do manage who's on 211 for our area through the United Way. And so in regards to our area, yes, it is listed for folks needing housing services and obtaining case management or housing navigation services. So, and then Butte, I don't know, Steve, if you had anything to say for the 211 resource.
Yeah, no, a lot of referrals that we get are from other agencies or businesses, knowing that we're pretty much the housing agency here in Butte. You know, Western does a little bit on their own, but for the most part, Action Inc. is the housing agency. So, you know, lots of phone calls, people coming through the doors, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for checking the chat for questions. And I know that we're kind of just for timing, but I'll go over just a few challenges that I've seen, and they're very similar to what both Sean and Steve have seen as well. But in regards to also solutions a little bit too, because we'll be going into the last question. But with collaboration and engagement with landlords, there is landlord associations and other groups to engage with landlords. And just for my area within Helena, it's been harder to engage with certain groups when it comes to landlords. And so what we've done as a solution with the program is creating landlord engagement events. And so we're going to be launching those now pretty much every other month, and just reaching out to both private landlords and property managers, and anyone else is welcome to attend. But that would be just one solution that we're just trying to increase that engagement piece and understanding on both sides, and just educating folks about the program and anything else in regards to housing. So there's always a lot going on, so it's good to have conversations in regards to it. The other thing too would be with the funding piece. It'd be fantastic to be able to offer more incentives, especially with a lot of newer landlords coming in. Folks are in areas that are experiencing new buyers buying homes and renting them out now, or even folks that are not living in the state of Montana and they're purchasing homes in the state and renting them out too. Just being able to hopefully continue to engage with those landlords or those buyers in the best way that we can. Both continuing to work with property management companies if they're managing those units, and then if offering maybe incentives. But the incentive piece can look very different. And I know that also Alex at Homeward in Missoula, I think, got some funding in regards to the incentive piece. And he'll probably maybe touch base a little bit more on that. And there's a session later today. But that would probably be another challenge that has come up in trying to increase that engagement. So I'm going to go to that next question, unless there's anything else in the Q&A. But yeah, if Steve, if you want to go ahead and start off with our last question. So just kind of going over solutions that we have come up with.
So I would say, you know, solutions that seem to work for housing as far as we're concerned. I mean, here in Butte is letting you know, having that relationship with the landlord, but then letting them know that, you know, if something comes up between when we meet up again with the tenant, that we definitely want them to contact us if we haven't talked to them yet, so we can work on any issues that are there to try to keep them housed. So I mean, and everybody knows this, the biggest thing is case management. Not enough case managers. Nobody has the time to do everything you got to do, plus provide the case management that's needed. So what's worked for me is I've given landlords especially on some of the ones that were the tough sales, I've given them my personal cell phone and let them know that they got my regular work phone between 8 and 5 Monday through Friday. But to make it work on some of them where they didn't want to do it or not until I offered that I was also available at nights and weekends. Good way to get burnt out fast. I mean, I felt it a couple times. Some of the landlords tested me on that just to see if I was actually going to do that. And then once I showed them that, you called me at night or on the weekend and I went up and we took care of the business, then, then they're willing to take on more of the folks that are coming through our agency. So that's just one thing. Another one is You know, we have one landlady that, you know, we went and got a gift certificate at a local restaurant for her and her husband. Of course, that we paid for out of our pocket. We can't use any of our, you know, our funds for that, the federal funds. So, you know, doing that, meeting with them, bringing them alcohol. I had one landlord say, well, yeah, I'll house them if you bring, you know, bring me a bottle of rum. So I went down to the liquor store, bought her a bottle of rum and brought it right back and said, okay, are we ready to go? And it worked. So you just got to be creative.
Yeah, Sean.
You know, I do love Butte. I do love Butte. So, you know, I think the one key thing that I have noticed, you know, well, there's a couple pieces to this. Obviously, the landlord engagement, landlord rapport, and incentivizing, those things are huge with being able to convince somebody to take less money than what they would get if they went to somebody else who has cash in their hand ready to move into a place, which is often what we're battling here when it comes to housing our clients. So, you know, that's definitely one of the biggest issues, and something that, though we have seen some progress or some, I would say, some solution to getting people housed is really making sure that we engage a little bit more than, you know, we're engaged, we're not taking it all the way to them. We're not leading the horse to water, you know, but we are doing maybe 51%. You know, we are, if we see that they're not as motivated to maybe resolve, like they're in the shelter, you know, and it's like, you can only be there for like 2 months, you know, if you're not trying. So we will do through our coordinated entry and stuff like that, we will try to re-engage or engage folks that, you know, maybe we didn't see it in the first time we met them, but might need a little extra help, you know. So giving them that extra little help, making sure that they're, you know, prepared mentally and physically for, you know, going to a landlord and presenting themselves as a potential tenant. You know, prepping the client has been, you know, a lot more helpful, especially whenever we're dealing with the housing market like we are right now. If, you know, I always tell people, you know, I know it's tough right now, but you can't show up and meet somebody in your PJs that you've been wearing for 3 or 4 days. And I don't expect you to go, you know, be able to shower and look as pretty as you would on Sunday or something, but you know, you need to be presentable and show that you're making an effort to, otherwise they're going to be like, hey, if they're like this outside, who knows what they're going to do to my place. So we've seen a lot of success in that regard, where, you know, if we prep the client, it ends up going a lot further whenever they do actually meet the landlord. And, you know, it's kind of gets their foot in the door, because, you know, our word, we get people in all the time, you know, please, you know, take this person like but, you know, that only goes so far if we keep having, you know, people leave housing or fail out of housing, but get evicted from housing within months, you know, of moving in there. So that prep work we've seen a lot of success in the last year, where people are maintaining their housing longer and longer, and not being in bad standing with their landlord, because they are engaging. They do talk to them, and they don't wait till, you know, 3 months of not telling them that the toilet was clogged, you know. Not that that happened, I'm just saying.
And the double and triple deposits help too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's something that some of our programs have recently been able to utilize funds in a way that historically we've only been able to do 1 or maybe 2 times the amount of for deposit assistance. Right now, because we are in this housing crisis, we have been given a little bit more flexibility to say, we will give you a down payment for a mortgage or a house payment, but it'll be just for a deposit for a rental. So
yeah,
please, Chan.
Yeah, I know I was just looking at time. So I will just mention too, very similar to what Sean and Steve were mentioning, but with that prep piece that Sean had mentioned was one thing that I've seen it being more successful here, and which is why we're rolling out renter courses, is that education. And that goes along with that prep work. And so that is something that we've seen be very beneficial. And we've done surveys. My program has done surveys out to landlords and property managers and asking them what they would see as maybe solutions or what they would like to see. And renter courses were the one thing that came up. It's just not offered in our area. And just to help folks with that process of just knowing their rights, knowing how to, yes, make sure they're dressed nice, going to a house showing, basically consider trying to apply for a house like you're applying for a job. And so that that housing application is going to be like your resume, coming up with a cover letter to focus on your strengths when you're applying for housing. And so different types of key factors go into that, and just trying to overcome barriers and educating folks on how to engage and talk to landlords in order to maybe get over anything that might come up, whether it be a background, if they've had an eviction before, anything like that. And so that has been definitely one solution that has come up. Another thing too, and I had talked to Sean and Steve about it, and it depends on the clientele and who's willing to do it. But one additional solution we're slowly rolling out within the housing navigation program is with shared housing. And so being able to work with clients in my program who may have another individual within their own job, even most of the time it does happen. For example, I work with a lot of construction workers. And so some of those construction workers may both be experiencing housing instability and are willing to become what we'd call roommates. And so trying to work with folks on finding housing for 2 individuals instead of just 1. And that hopefully would increase the capacity to house folks. Even though rent prices are increasing, having someone else in the household to help pay with that high rent costs, overall kind of just drives the effect, and hopefully stay housed during this time with the market the way it is. But that has been another solution that has come up as well. Yeah, so is there any other Q&A? I'm sorry, Andrea.
That's okay. That was great, everybody. That was really great. We just have a couple of minutes here. I'm going to direct this question to you, Chandler, and hopefully this is something you can answer relatively quickly, and then I'll ask a question that is more general to the panel. Somebody in Helena who's been working with a client that's been homeless most of their life, they have certainly connected that person with all of the necessary resources in order to stabilize them. Sounds like they have a particular kind of funding that's going to be running out. And they're asking, how can I get him into your program and get him housed so he doesn't go backwards?
Sure, yeah. And there's a lot of instances that happen where people fall through the cracks. And so welcome to enter the program through calling Good Samaritan Ministries, and then just making an appointment with Housing Navigation Services. So it's as simple as that. Our phones are always ringing out the hooks, so we will take the calls and set up appointments. So, and I'm very flexible. I've taken appointments as late as 8 o'clock at night. So I'm very flexible on work schedules and life for folks. So
that's incredible. Yeah, thank you. A question that was asked in the online app is, do any of the organizations on the panel have a housing resume template that you could share with everyone? And if so, is that possible that you could either put it in the chat? If not, maybe that's something you could add to the resources in the Whova app. I'm seeing Chandler.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could do both,
Great.
just make it easier. But yes, I will note that, I mean, for example, I don't know if Sean and Steve kind of have that template, if you will. But I have used a very similar template that Homeward in Missoula also uses with Alex. And so happy to share that as a resource too. And if Alex wants to add in additional resources through that app as an overall collective, I think that would be helpful But I don't know if Sean and Steve have anything.
We don't hear, we're always thinking of ideas and things that could definitely benefit our clients that we're helping out. So, that is definitely something we'd like to look at and see if we can incorporate that with our programs.
Great. We'll be happy to share all those resources. Excellent.
Thank you.
You bet. Another quick question here before we get to the end of our time. Some folks have asked, we have a problem finding homes for registered offenders. And does anybody on the panel have suggestions for navigating for those clients?
Registered violent offenders there, it's difficult enough for them guys to try to find housing. There are some landlords that'll work with them on that, a few. As far as registered sex offenders, we have an extremely difficult time here in Butte trying to get those folks housed. No landlords, they're eligible for assistance through our agency because they meet the criteria. But trying to find somebody who is willing to rent to them, that's the difficult part. So we have the Lincoln Hotel here in Butte up on Park Street. And I would say 75 to 80% of the folks that live in that hotel are registered sex offenders and some violent offenders also. There's just not, it's a tough sell. It really is.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. Yep. And outside of violent and sexual offenders, there are just registered offenders, and sometimes that ends up being a barrier to accessing a home. So outside of violent and sexual offenders, which I concur is a very large challenge for all of our organizations. What about folks that are just regular old offenders that have, a felony and or misdemeanor, but felony on their record? Any suggestions? Quickly, 30 seconds each. Sean and Chandler, go.
I'll go ahead since I'm unmuted, but I do know actually a lot of the low income companies or property management companies have recently in the last year or two gone where they're not discriminating against felons anymore. They are just not letting felons at all in their housing. They're just not, we're not going to decide whether they're violent or, if they're a fraud case, if you're a felon, and those are a lot of the tax credit places, believe it or not. So we have the single room occupancy motel converted into apartment buildings. A lot of those places will work with some of our felons. But really, a lot of the property management and apartment complexes have actually gone the other direction and really made it to where it's even more of an ostracized group in regards to low income housing. So not much hope as far as that goes, sorry. But we do have, our housing navigation rapport with landlords is the way that we try to circumvent any of those barriers.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say communication, and connection. So building that trust with landlords and property managers goes a long way when it comes to then trying to house these folks that might have a felony record. And there has been a little bit more flexibility when it comes to tax credit and subsidized housing, low income housing, however you'd like to word it. But yes, when it comes to the private landlords here in Helena, they are definitely more open to doing case by case basis. And a lot of the folks, it's been easier if in my program, because all of them are employed, they're willing to be able to pay rent, in which a lot of other folks may not be able to at this time. And so being able to just communicate and explain why they would be a good tenant, offering additional support letters, writing that cover letter, and meeting them in person, it definitely helps.
Thank you, Chandler. I'm sorry we can't get to all of the excellent questions in the chat and online. There will be additional resources provided through the app. And then also, as has been mentioned, there is an additional panel this afternoon called Creating Partnerships to Increase Renter Access, and it'll be an extension of this conversation. So I would encourage folks that are interested to take part. That's at 1 o'clock. I want to thank all of the amazing panelists, Steve, Sean, and Chandler. Excellent information. And I want to thank you for your work. You're doing incredible work in this community and you're strengthening the Montana communities. And I want to thank you. Keep it up. I know it's exhausting, but you're changing people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chandler, good
you.
job. Way to go. Sean,
Yeah,
you too, buddy.
yeah,
We'll
go
be
team.
talking.
All right.
Wacky Wednesday to everybody.
Yeah, we'll see y'all back at 1 o'clock. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.